What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 6 of C&D Sports, where we give you daily updates, the boldest takes, and the best debates in all of sports. I'm Caleb Moody. That's Daniel Singh.
What's going on, guys? We're going to start with some MLB regular season updates along with NHL and NBA playoff updates. But before we get into that, let's start with the Euro 2020. Although it's the year 2021, they're a year late with it because of COVID.
But they're here.
They're here. It started off a little crazy with, I believe it was Denmark and Finland.
Yeah, we should probably start by just saying how happy we are that Christian Eriksen is doing okay. Definitely not something you want to see.
No.
You never want to see guys collapse on the pitch like that.
It's crazy they made them finish that game the same evening, but they agreed to it, so
yeah,
there was a lot of heart there.
We won't get into that. That's the UEFA and the Denmark team situation. It's a little messy, depending on who you talk to.
Yep.
But the bottom line is really happy that Christian Eriksen is okay, that he came through everything. So yeah, very, very happy about that.
Yep.
But let's get into the games now. So we'll start in Group A. They're one of the groups that, as we film today, have played 2 games out of their 3 in their group. Italy has won both. Looked very good, very not the typical Italian team we're used to seeing, where they kind of go for that those 1-0 wins, score that first goal, and then just play defense. They've scored 6 goals and not conceded any in their first 2 games. They're atop there. I've been very impressed with Wales at 4 points there. Good draw against Switzerland and then a good win against Turkey. Switzerland I've been a bit disappointed with. Would have thought that they'd probably finish second in this group. But they're still sitting at 1 point. They're not out of it yet. They still have a game against Turkey, who at this point, they haven't scored yet. Mm-hmm. I expected a little more out of Turkey. I thought this was the most interesting group, not the group of death, of course, but the most interesting group. So that's it for Group A. So I don't really see the standings changing from how they are. I think Italy and Wales will move on for sure, and Switzerland will hope to be one of the 4 third-place teams to move on to the round of 16.
All right.
Group B, they just finished their action as we film today. Belgium sits on top, 6 points. Came back against Denmark today for a big 3 points there. Russia with 3 points, beating Finland yesterday, or as we filmed yesterday. And Finland at 3 points, kind of the surprise victory. Their inaugural tournament, Euro tournament there, got a win in their first game there. Against Denmark. Denmark, given they've played well, the 0 points doesn't really represent how well they played those games. Mm-hmm. Their game against Belgium they played spectacularly, but Belgium's just the top team in the world for a reason. So, and given the circumstances with Christian Eriksen,
they're behind the ball.
Yeah, they're definitely behind the ball on this one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Group C. So as it stands right now, the Netherlands and Austria are still playing. The Netherlands are winning right now over Austria. Kind of expect them to pull through and be on top with 6 points. They almost didn't have 6 points. Very tough game against Ukraine, who's looked very good in this tournament. Big win over North Macedonia, who, although they sit last in their first Euro tournament ever, have looked good. Austria got their first Euro tournament win last week against North Macedonia. So they sit at 3 points. Really, that group's up in the air with those 3 teams. Where they're going to finish, likely the Netherlands will finish on top there. Group D, my group of choice, considering I'm an England supporter. England came out well in their first game. Big 3 points there. Big goal by Raheem Sterling. Calvin Phillips was the man of the match there. I just want to shout him out. First Euro tournament, first real international big tournament. Played very well. Czech Republic got a big win over Scotland. The Scots played pretty well there. But at the end of the day, I think the Scots are the odd ones out when you've got those 2 teams at 3 points, and then the team that you're tied with at 0 is Croatia, who is the reigning World Cup runners-up. So those 3 teams I could all see very well making it through. Slovakia, surprise win in Group E. They sit on top with 3 points there. A surprise tie between Spain and Sweden. I would have thought the Spaniards would have come out a little stronger. And Poland, that surprise loss to Slovakia. If I had to, when I was predicting my groups before, I had Spain and then Poland, and Spain's sitting at 1 point and Poland doesn't have any right now. So definitely an interesting storylines there. And then we get to the last and most exciting group, the group of death, where you have the reigning Euro 2016 champions, Portugal. You have France and Germany, two powerhouses there. Sorry, Hungary, you're going to be the odd one out here. Portuguese took care of business against Hungary. Hungary played a great game. The 3-0 loss. The way that they played, it looks more like a 1-0 loss. Portugal was always going to win that game, but it's not. A 3-0 loss is not representative to how well Hungary played. And France, via the German own goal, snuck out a win against Germany there. I could definitely see all three of those teams moving on as well. But it'll be interesting because when you're playing teams that hard, especially Germany with the recent struggles they've had in international tournaments, it could be tough having to play Portugal. I don't know if they can beat Portugal, and I don't know if 3 points against Hungary would be enough. So we'll see, but that does it for Euro updates. Be sure to watch the social media pages because we'll have more updates as the group stages finish up and move into the round of 16.
Yes, sir. So the MLB has issued a new ruling for the foreign substances.
Yeah.
Under the new guidelines, any pitcher who possesses or applies foreign substances in violation of the rules will be ejected from the game and automatically suspended in accordance with the rules and past precedents. Suspension under Rule 3.01 are 10 games.
Yep.
Starting pitchers will have more than one mandatory check per game, and relievers must be checked at the end of the inning when they enter the game and when they are taken out of the game, whichever comes first.
Yeah.
Typically, the inspections will take place between innings or during pitching changes to give the umpires ample time to perform a thorough check without delaying the game. Players will be paid during suspensions for this violation. Repeat offenders will be subject to progressive discipline.
Yeah.
Clubs and club personnel will also be subject to discipline for failure to ensure compliance with these rules.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had last week was there going to be progressive suspensions? And it sounds like there will be.
That's good.
They're
treating it like steroids.
They are treating it like steroids, and it kind of needs to be treated like steroids.
Yeah.
I know we're not the only ones I know we are, this isn't the only way of thinking that people have. A lot of pitchers are actually mad about this. Carlos Rodon just came out this week and said he doesn't agree with the sudden suspensions when the Astros knowingly cheated as well and none of their players were suspended.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are upset about that. Tyler Glasnow being one of them.
Yes.
He just went down with a UCL injury. Could be very lengthy.
Yep.
But he's blaming it on the lack of foreign substance use. The fact that he couldn't use the sticky stuff, because he admitted in his interview to using a sunscreen and rosin mixture. Yep. Which is one of the ones that were named. Spider Tack, sunscreen, and rosin were the two main substances that were being checked for on pitchers. But he basically, came out and said he thinks it's ridiculous. A lot of players think it's ridiculous that there's a sudden, all of a sudden they weren't paying attention to this, and now it's 10 games and they're checking you multiple times a game. Yeah. So they think it's
going back to the Astros. This isn't comparable. These are two completely different situations. Yeah. I like that they're treating it like steroids. Yeah. Now, do I think the Astros should have been more severely punished? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that. Yeah, I think this is met with frustration, and I do, to an extent, I feel for some pitchers to say that all of a sudden the MLB is interested in it, and it's just like it is very abrupt. But I think with a situation like this, you kind of need to be abrupt, because if you slowly and gradually put these things in before you just get to outright suspending people are going to find ways around cheating.
Yeah, well, it's for the sake of the integrity of the game.
Exactly.
There have been so many ways to cheat in baseball and in the majors for so long. Yeah. They have to do this to keep things intact, to keep baseball history intact. Yeah. And yeah, I understand it's mid-season and ideally you want this kind of change, but the numbers are ridiculous. Yeah. Right? For there to be so many no-hitters. Yeah. and to break records undeservingly, I don't think that's fair to those who set them before.
Yeah, it's definitely the integrity of the game is at stake here, and I think the discipline that they're going to hand down, or the rules that they put in place, represent that. Like I said before, it's going to be a messy situation. A lot of people aren't going to like this, but at the same time, you look at a guy like Garrett Cole, who we talked about last week. You know, I was watching the game Wednesday night, and I was watching the end of the game, and it was the 8th inning, and he was still in there. He only gave up 2 runs off 2 home runs, so he's not using the stuff now.
He's adapting,
and he's adapting.
And a good pitcher as well.
And that's the thing, like for Tyler Glasnow to come out and say that he had to completely alter his way of pitching, you shouldn't have to. In that case, it should just be you're trying to get that extra edge if you're using the sticky stuff.
Yeah.
So
just because you're using substances, that won't get you into the show. If you got there, you earned it. So to get off of it and to be a good pitcher again, you have to figure out how to get your game back in a true and honest way.
And I think that, you know, the ability just to use the rosin bag on there should be enough for you to get some sort of grip on it.
Yeah.
Anything other than that just seems unnecessary in my opinion, but
yep, fair enough. Let's move on to All Star Voting.
Yeah.
Before we get into this, I want to talk about Vladimir Guerrero for a second.
Yeah.
When he came into the league,
yes,
like when he got called up to the MLB, I think a lot of people were a little disappointed, thought he was overhyped. So I don't know if that lowered expectations, because right now he is very much blowing them out of the water.
Yes, he is very much. He's very much been the best offensive player in the league this year.
Oh, easily. And right now he's probably front running the MVP race.
Yeah. We'll touch on that a bit later.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and with that, he's earned himself first in voting for the All-Star game.
Yeah, not just in the American League, in the MLB.
Yeah, in the MLB, and he is 22 years old, turning 22 this year.
Yeah.
Young guy, the future is right for him. And I don't think, it's definitely not a hot take. Like, he deserves that.
He does.
He's been fantastic.
Because he's not your typical power hitter. He's walking a ton. His on-base percentage is ridiculous. The guy hits for more than just home runs. If you look at him, he's got, 3-4 hit nights consistently, and he's hitting for doubles. He's finding gaps. He's a smart hitter. He's not just going to go up there and try to go 450 dead center every single time, but he can do that. And he can do that very easily.
Yeah, he's looking like a prime Miguel Cabrera.
He's looking
a triple crown. I don't think is far fetched for him to get. He may even get it this year.
He looks like his dad.
Yeah, better.
He looks better than his dad.
Yeah, better.
And Vlad's a legend.
Yeah, that's high praises.
That's what's scary.
Like this may be, if he continues this pace, this may be better than anything Vlad Sr.'s ever done.
Yeah, and I love the way that the MLB is going now. That it's these young players that are dominating the league. Like you've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the American League side leading votes, and on the National League side it's Ronald Acuna, and Ronald Acuna is just as explosive.
Yep.
Just he's a fun player to watch. You've got Fernando Tatis is in there on the other side too. You've got guys that are starting to make a name for themselves this year, like Jesse Winker. Like there's a lot of younger guys coming up that are just making this league very fun to watch.
Yeah.
And just it's very entertaining baseball, and it's nice to see guys not. I'm not going to say that Vlad didn't stutter when he came up. His first 2 seasons were a little abnormal, but the fact that he's 22 years old and he's putting up these types of numbers is just crazy. Like it's not going to be one of those slow rising players that maybe by the time they're getting their big contract at 26, 27, 28 years old is when they're really thriving. He's right out of the gate. And they're forcing a lot of clubs to adapt, and they're making a lot of these younger clubs like San Diego, Atlanta, and Toronto. They're putting them on the map and putting them in places to succeed and possibly get postseason play.
Yep. Jays fans have more to look to with Marcus Semien leading the votes at second. As of now, he doesn't have much competition in Altuve and LeMahieu, who may be underperforming, or maybe Marcus Semien's just been that good.
Marcus Semien has been unreal.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. And then at short, you have Bo Bichette. behind Xander Bogaerts, but still, future's bright for
Yeah.
their fielders, their hitters.
And they still haven't even seen George Springer for more than 2 games.
No.
That's the thing. They're doing all this stuff. We're talking about this stuff, and we're not talking about George Springer, who's the biggest offseason signing in Blue Jays history.
Yep.
So,
I do like seeing some vets in the votes, though.
Yeah.
At catcher, you have Buster Posey for the NL and Sal Perez leading the way.
yeah.
It's great to see those guys still kicking around now.
And it's not like one of those things where, you see a lot in the like NBA All Star game, especially where they vote in a lot of guys. Like when Kobe was playing his final years, they were voting him in, like Dwayne Wade. They were voting him in, and they weren't Dirk. Like they were voting them out of respect as opposed to ability.
Yep.
Whereas Buster Posey's having a good year.
Yeah.
And Sal Perez on the other side is having a good year in Kansas City. So they're deserving of being starters. They're deserving of being in that conversation. Whether or not they're the best catchers in the game, but they're having good enough seasons that you're not upset about that if you're trying to get the best players in the starting lineup.
Yeah. Now at third, Rafael Devers is a little not surprising to me. Like he's putting up the numbers.
Yeah.
But you'd expect a little more out of Anthony Rendon, maybe even out of Bregman.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Bregman's starting to figure it out. I think the Astros are starting to come into their own. I think if the Oakland A's don't have these hot stretches that they always have, they're 12-2 in the month of June. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. I think we'd be talking more about them. Rafael Devers had a very good start to the year.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes him look a little less intriguing at third base there. But he started the year on fire. He was one of the best hitters in baseball within the first couple weeks of the season. So
so let's move on to the MLB MVP and Cy Young race.
yeah.
Leading the way, let's start with Cy Young. When you look at these guys, who for the AL, I think it's a little more wide open. Mm-hmm. There isn't a clear-cut candidate
For Cy Young.
Okay. You see Chicago, they've got 3 guys there you could argue.
Yeah.
Garrett Cole still in the mix, and if he continues to play as well as he has without the foreign substances,
Yeah.
he'll be in the mix. Who else are you looking at?
I think right now, Garrett Cole, in my opinion, he's kind of the clear front runner.
Yeah.
For Cy Young. I don't see a whole lot of other people putting up much. Another guy that's interesting, it'll be interesting to see how injured he is Tyler Glasnow. He was having a really good season to this point. If he goes out and needs Tommy John, that'll derail his Cy Young award-winning chances.
Mm-hmm.
Shane Bieber's another guy I look at. His strikeout rate is crazy. The guy, and that's what voters, Cy Young voters and the writers, that's what they like to look for.
Yeah.
Is the high strikeout.
Strikeouts, whip, and ERA.
Yeah. So
And
his
wins.
ERA is respectable. His strikeout rates are high, but I think it's Garrett Cole's to lose at this point.
Okay. And then in the NL, who are you looking at? I mean,
it's a one-horse race.
About it. Yeah, it's Jacob deGrom.
Jacob deGrom. Zach Wheeler's having a very interesting season. Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns had a good start to the year. Kevin Gausman is a name that I am very happy to see him succeed in San Francisco. Big reason why San Francisco is the way they are. Like if I had to go my 3 finalists for the NL Cy Young, Jacob deGrom 1, Zach Wheeler 2, Kevin Gausman 3.
Okay.
And in the AL, Cole, Glasnow, then Bieber.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, AL MVP.
Yeah.
Right now, I look at who's in the race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Vlad could get this at age 22.
I think Vlad is the clear front runner at this point. I don't think there's a whole lot of competition. No competition. There are some people kicking around.
Ohtani, Bogarts are all guys to look at.
That's
about it.
But like my top 3 right now, Vlad 1, Shohei Ohtani 2, Xander Bogaerts 3.
Yeah.
That's those I think will be the finals. Marcus Semien is one of those guys that is slowly making his way up.
He's been fantastic.
And if he were to pass a guy like Bogarts or maybe Ohtani, if the pitching starts to struggle a little bit, he could definitely be a finalist again.
Yep. And then in the NL, it's looking like Tatis. But there's a little more of a race there, and it's pretty wide open. I don't know. Is that crazy to say?
I don't think it's Tatis.
No?
I don't actually have him in my finalists right now.
Oh, okay.
I think he's cooled off a little bit.
Yep.
But I mean, he could very well get there. He's that talented of a ball player.
But we can agree it's wide open.
It is a lot more open than the AL right
Yeah.
now. And I think out of the 4 major awards, it's probably the most wide open.
Yep.
But I have Acuna Jr.
Okay.
at the top right now. Just spectacular this year. I love watching that home run race between him and Vlad, just constant back and forth of who's going to take the league lead. But I have Acuna 1. Nick Castellanos is having a very underappreciated season in Cincinnati. He's got a really high WAR this year.
Yep.
And third, I have Jacob deGrom.
You don't have Muncy?
Muncy, I think Muncy and Tatis are probably the next 2 guys on my list.
Yeah.
But in terms of the top 3, the ones that are going to be there on voting night, I think it's Acuna, Castellanos, and deGrom right now.
Okay.
I deGrom's probably the best player in the National League,
Yeah.
but
It's
very
tough for a
very
pitcher.
seldomly, unless the competition isn't that great, like when Kershaw won it or when Verlander won it before. They got to be, and not saying that Kershaw's not spectacular, but his competition is a lot better than those guys' competition were when they won
Yep.
their MVPs. So, yeah, Acuna, Castellanos, and deGrom would be my finalists as of right now.
Yeah. So in the NBA, we have some news.
Yeah.
The Pelicans have a couple things going on. They fired Stan Van Gundy,
Yep, Stan the man is gone.
and Zion Williamson and his family are reportedly unhappy.
Yeah, there are members of his family that were unhappy, and then reports came out today that Zion Williamson is unhappy right now with the state of the Pelicans.
Yep. I think they very much underachieved. I don't know if they're putting too much stock in their core players, maybe.
Yeah,
That's
know.
the only possibility. Ingram has proven that he can be serviceable. Ball's good. Zion's got to take a hold of this ship and lead them. If he's not gonna do it, then he's gonna have to go somewhere where he's a second option, maybe.
and I have the feeling Zion's probably, I don't think this is the whole issue, but he's probably in the state of mind where he's a little upset from being snubbed from the All-NBA teams.
Okay.
And I think he was one of the, when they talked about the snubs, he was one of the 3 guys, him, Tatum, and Russell Westbrook were guys that I think could have made, I don't know who I would take out, but they're guys that could have made one of the 3 teams and didn't. So maybe that could be playing into why it could add to his frustrations. I certainly think he has a case for being frustrated in New Orleans because they did very much underachieve with what was considered to be, a team that very well was capable of at least making the play-ins.
Yes, they should have, but what more do you want? I think the players have got to be and do more. Maybe they can beef up on the depth end. But
I think their bench needs. I think their bench needs a lot more. I think
Yeah.
again, like you said, there's a lot of stock in their starting lineup because their starting lineup is on paper is good with Ball and Bledsoe in the backcourt, and then you have Zion, Steven Adams, and Brandon Ingram in the front court. So I don't. I don't really see what more you need on that end. There's a lot of playoff teams that, like, you look at the Washington Wizards, they had a worse front court. They had a far worse starting lineup than the Pelicans. I get they're in a different conference, but
how did Memphis make it? How did Golden State make it?
and I think
Even
it just
San
comes down.
Down.
I think it just comes down to depth at that point.
But still, like,
'cause,
on paper,
like
the Pelicans very much underachieved. Like you said, they at the very least should have been a play-in team.
yeah.
And with that, the Wizards also fired head coach Scott Brooks.
Yeah.
I didn't really think their season was entirely his fault, but if they're going for a restructure, I understand
he's
where
been
they're
there
coming
for a
from.
while.
Yeah, it's 5 years, 4 years, something like that.
Something like that. Like enough time that they haven't really succeeded under him.
Yeah.
So
And before we move on, who do you blame for the Pelicans season? Like, they fired their coach. What do you think it's just a depth issue? Can they get more out of their players? Because I think they can and they should.
I think it's a depth issue, and I think that they need a different voice. I don't think Stan Van Gundy's necessarily the right voice for a lot of NBA teams right now.
Yep.
I didn't necessarily agree with the hire when they brought him in. So yeah, I'm gonna go. I think a new coach will certainly help, and they got to focus on the depth.
So Chris Paul is out.
Yeah,
He's put in COVID-19 protocol, so that
Yeah.
could be 10 to 14 days.
Yeah.
For LeBron, it wasn't because they found a scenario in which he could come back.
yeah.
You think it'll be the same, or do you think it'll be extended time away?
It all depends on what his exposure is. If his exposure was just, he wasn't wearing a mask at a party, or if he was actually exposed to someone with COVID.
Yeah.
Because if he's exposed to someone with COVID or has COVID, he has to be out the full 14 days.
Yeah.
But if it's a LeBron situation, I think they have to bring him back, because if you brought LeBron back, you have to do the same thing
Yep.
for everyone else.
For sure.
But I don't know. I tend to think, and this is just me speculating, that it's probably a little more serious than LeBron's. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. I think he's definitely in doubt for this series, and
If that's the case, I think the West may be the Clippers to lose because Paul George pulled up on Utah without
PG-13
Kawhi.
is here,
Indiana PG-13.
and it's PG-13. It's not playoff P anymore.
Oh, yeah. This guy's a monster, and if he can continue this, the Clippers are going to be a force, especially with the injuries to Harden and Irving. Harden's back, but he's definitely not playing at 100%.
Yeah.
And Kevin Durant proved that he's currently the best player in basketball.
Yep.
When he pulled up and beat Milwaukee, because this team is worse than the Boston Celtics with the lack of depth. And again, Harden pulled up for 6 points. Either Milwaukee just doesn't want to be there, or
Because who else is around Durant
yeah,
that, when Harden and Kyrie are both out?
Yeah.
So he is single-handedly, if he single-handedly wins a championship for Brooklyn, I think it's one of the biggest feats that has ever been accomplished in the NBA, because he would have done it on his own.
better than anything LeBron's ever done, because there's
Yeah.
still serious competition. Philadelphia isn't one of those team members like Milwaukee. They seem to check out when it
checked out?
matters. Atlanta now has a series lead after being down 26.
And 21 the night before.
Yeah.
Philadelphia was up 2-1, up 21 points in game 3, looking like they just had to close this one out, go up 3-1, head back to Philly, take care of business, 5-game series.
Yeah. And like the one thing I want to point out is Seth Curry and Trae Young pretty much canceled each other out, and Joel Embiid still pulled up. Atlanta had the better unit as a team, and where was Ben Simmons in all of this?
Where has Ben Simmons been this entire season? Like it just seems as though that he's not there.
He just got his DPOY nominee and dipped.
Like he just, like, at this point, he just seems like he's there for the paychecks, and that's it. Like it seems like he doesn't care. He doesn't care enough to work on some sort of shooting game, that because they're just playing like hack-a-ben inside, and he's shooting 30% from the free throw line.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. There are big men that shoot better than he does, and I get he's a big guy.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, he's a backcourt player. He should have some sort of shooting ability. He's a number 1 overall pick, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Like, he should have some sort of confidence in taking a jump shot, he can't.
When you care about team success, you care about improving for your team.
He doesn't
your
care about
is
team
better.
success. And I think that's the issue with Philadelphia. I don't think a lot of guys care about team success there. And I think Joel Embiid does, especially
Yes.
after seeing him in 2019 in tears after they lost to the Raptors. But I think at the same time, he's also injured. So his focus right now is on just getting through games right now with the torn meniscus.
And this is where Ben Simmons needs to pull up. But Milwaukee,
He's not that guy.
He's not. Milwaukee and Philadelphia really should make some big moves this offseason, unless somehow they can use these as wake-up calls. Because Milwaukee's, this is their
wake-up
series.
calls do these guys need, though?
But this is their series to lose along with Philadelphia. If they lose it, again, they have to go through some serious changes. Atlanta currently is the biggest competition in Brooklyn.
Like, I just...
Atlanta.
I honestly don't know what wake-up calls these teams need. What was losing in 7 games to Toronto not enough for you in 2019? Maybe losing in the first round of Boston last year, was that not enough?
Well, they weren't healthy.
They've given up. Honestly, this is probably the worst 2 games you could ever see in the playoffs. And like,
Philadelphia
was that
has
not
been
enough?
incredibly disappointing.
And the same thing with Milwaukee. Was giving up a 2-0 lead in 2019 to the Toronto Raptors not enough? How about last year when
So what you're saying, rebuild? What if they
I don't know. I don't
what
know
if they
what they
put
need.
their
I'm not
teams
saying
together
rebuild
and one
because
of them rebuild?
when you have Giannis, when you have Embiid,
Yeah.
when you have Simmons, Drew Holiday, like all those guys are in the mix for these two teams.
Yeah.
Like obviously you're not thinking rebuild because these are very good teams.
Yeah.
Like Philadelphia just finished with the best record in the East. Milwaukee's finished with the best record in the East the 2 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that these teams need to rebuild, but something's got to happen because it's definitely not a wake up call at this point. Because if you need 3 wake up calls to get it through your head, you have bigger problems.
Yeah.
And it's just a lack of caring on their part.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, what if they combine these two teams and one of them rebuilt?
I definitely don't think they make those moves. I don't think they can make those moves.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, it's interesting, but I don't think taking 2 teams that seem like they've checked out and putting them together. I don't think having a team full
Kevin
of
Durant
checkouts
would
is going
just
to do
find
anything.
another way to beat them.
I just don't get it. I'm baffled, and it's not. Milwaukee got beat by Kevin Durant, who again, as Giannis said, he's probably the best player in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
Philadelphia got beat by Atlanta, who is the 5th seed. Probably wasn't supposed to be this high this year. This team wasn't even invited to the bubble last year. They got better in the offseason.
Yeah, it's a complete turnaround.
But Philadelphia is a force to be reckoned with, or should be at least,
yeah.
and they're not.
The East is a little more interesting to pick from because I think it's clear cut the Clippers get the West. The East,
If Chris Paul isn't there. If Chris Paul is there, Phoenix gets the West, no question.
I think it's going to be a series.
It'll be an interesting series, but I have no doubt in my mind that Phoenix will be able to. The Clippers will be the toughest team they've had to play.
Yeah.
But Phoenix should get through.
So Atlanta, Brooklyn, you think Milwaukee, Philadelphia can do anything?
I'm not going to count them out yet.
Okay. Yeah. So the East
because,
is still
again,
wide open. I think any team can come out of the
I could
East.
see any sort of matchup there.
Yeah. Whereas the West is a little more clear cut. In terms of who wins the West,
the Western Conference Finals matchup is clear cut at this point.
Yes, it depends.
Yeah.
Who wins is dependent on Chris Paul.
Yeah.
But even with him back, it's still going to be a series.
Oh, it's going to be a good series. But yeah, if he's not there, I don't really think the Clippers have very much competition. But at the same time, I'm not going to count out Utah quite yet.
No.
But the Clippers look as good as they ever have.
Utah can win the series if Kawhi stays out.
Yeah.
As great as PG was last night, I'm not saying you can't depend on him. Utah's just a deeper team.
And that they have a deeper starting lineup. I think the Clippers have a lot more interesting depth. But in terms of their starting lineup, yeah, Utah's starting lineup without Kawhi Leonard, I would take them over the Clippers starting lineup any day.
Yep, for sure. Now moving on to the NHL.
Yeah.
Small news, but I think it's good news for Toronto. They're able to re-sign Jason Spezza.
Yeah.
He wants to be there.
He even came out and said if he could take less money, he would.
He believes in the team. So it's good to see a vet who has not won a cup.
Yeah.
Right? Because right now he's pretty much cup chasing.
Mm-hmm.
He has no reason to be in the league.
Yeah.
He's accomplished anything any player would except winning a cup.
Yeah.
And he believes in this team.
He does.
Very much bodes well for
when
them.
nobody else does.
Yeah. There's other speculation I've seen in terms of the expansion draft is that you need enough players signed.
Yeah.
I forgot the number.
It really comes on defense because...
No, but hold on. I forgot the number, but essentially what they're looking at is they would have, if they were to trade Kerfoot,
yeah,
then they would have Spezza and Engvall
yeah,
available to draft.
Yeah.
Which I think would be great for them. And then whichever defenseman,
yeah,
if they're able to get something for Kerfoot and then lose Engvall, that's $5 million.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
So
that's something, and of course, if it's between Spezza and Engvall,
they would not.
Engvall. They would take Engvall because not only is he younger, but if Spezza he'd just retire. He doesn't want to play for anyone else. So
yeah, I don't think he's going to Seattle now. Eichel trade talks seem to be heating up, but I'm looking at what teams are offering.
Yeah,
and it like Buffalo's in a place where they definitely are listening.
Yeah.
but they want the best possible return. And I don't think teams are offering Eichel-worthy assets.
No, and I don't think you're going to see Eichel-worthy assets get publicly shared like this.
Maybe.
Teams are going to lowball here. They're not going to put their best offer first.
Yeah.
They're going to do enough to have Buffalo listen to them so that they can come to the negotiation table there.
Yeah.
And the offers are definitely not Eichel worthy. Eichel is one of the, you could argue he's one of the top 10 players in the NHL right now.
Yeah.
And they're not getting top 10 offers right now, but that's not what they're going to get at this stage. I think if he's going to get traded, it's probably going to be sometime around July, sometime in the summer, I'd think.
I believe Buffalo wants a pick in this draft. So it may come sooner. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. They're looking for a pick in this draft, high prospect.
Yeah.
There have been reports that they may be able to acquire a top 10 pick this year, which would be good because if they're getting rid of Ristolainen as well, they should get rid of Miller. I think Jake McCabe's a good quality guy to keep.
Yeah.
You're going to build a solid future top four with Dahlin,
Yeah.
Yoki Haru, and whichever two defensemen you pick, and then you have McCabe.
Yeah.
Irwin's probably gone, but I think that's a great way to start rebuilding their blue line.
Yeah.
'Cause it's a very defensive heavy draft.
Yeah.
And then whichever prospect you're able to get. I saw one with Montreal. A lot of people are saying Caulfield's the guy they got to give up. Montreal's not going to do that.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting. But I can't. The reason why it's tough for me to picture an Eichel trade is because I haven't seen anything realistic.
Yeah.
Both of the deals going back and forth are very one-sided.
Yeah.
So we'll see when it comes, but that's definitely something to look out for. Now,
Yeah.
the playoffs, Montreal with Jeff Petrie convincingly won Game 2, tied the series.
Yeah.
I don't have any hot takes there. Montreal just outplayed them and did what they've been doing.
I mean, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot. Like, they look.
Hockey's just there aren't hot takes. And then you go over to Tampa Bay and New York. It's gritty hockey. It's just hockey to watch. You got to watch it to be entertained by it. There's not much to talk about. No hot takes because any one of these teams can take it. Tampa Bay's probably the favorite, but
Yeah.
these other teams can pull up.
I think the biggest storyline has been Jeff Petrie's eyes.
I think he got a, what is it, like a blood, not a blood clot.
Well, it's the painkillers he's using.
Oh, okay.
Because of his hand, the painkillers, it's one of the side effects.
Yeah, he looks like, I don't know if you've watched this show yet, but he looks like Omni-Man in the final episode.
Oh.
The guy,
I have not watched that show yet.
It's a very meme-worthy show.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this episode here. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe down below so you don't miss any of our uploads. We got a lot of mini-series coming, especially when the off-season hits. I think this week we've got uploads every day. So
We did last week. We're grinding for you guys.
yeah, so make sure, comment down below any takes that you have from this episode. And yeah, that'll do it for us. We'll see you next week. Peace.